Welcome to Coinology, the podcast.
You ain't getting no money if you constantly worried about what everybody else got to say. If you constantly got your eyes on what everybody else doing, you ain't getting no money. When it comes down to closing a deal, I get it done. Every single one. I'm the certified deal closer.
Welcome to Coinology, the podcast. Hey. Welcome to another episode of Coinology. And I have none other than Miss Kinnik Skyy in the studio. Y'all give it up for Kinnik.
Thank you, Queen.
Thank you for coming in today. It's an honor to have you in here.
I really appreciate you inviting me. Ever since I met you, much respect.
Thank
and I
you.
love being surrounded by amazing Black women who are doing amazing things. So when you ask me, I'm like, absolutely.
Yes. And I had heard for so many years about Kinnik Skyy. We have a lot of mutual friends. And everybody speaks so highly of you. And then when I was able to see your gift in action, I'm like, wow, this woman is the Beyonce of theater.
Oh, speak life.
Beyonce of theater, right?
Yes.
So have you always been in the space of acting? Is that your thing?
Yes.
From the beginning?
That was my first love, acting, since I was about 8-9 years old. My first school play was in the second grade.
Okay.
And we were having a class play, and we got the parts, and I wanted to be the lead, but I didn't get the lead, right? Never acted before, so I don't know why I thought I should be the lead. But I wanted it, and the lead was a witch. And there was a girl in the class who had red hair. So, of course, aesthetically, she's a natural fit for it, so they gave her the role. But I went home, it was my first script ever, and I learned all the parts. And I don't even know to this day why I did that. But I knew all the parts, got to our first rehearsal, and she choked. Margaret choked.
Oh no, Margaret choked.
Margaret choked, baby. I remember her name.
Okay.
And I said, I can do it. I want to do it. And I did it. And they just, I just remember the teachers being blown away. And after rehearsal, they took me aside and gave me candy. And if anybody knows me, they know I love food.
Oh. And that was the win for you.
That was like, I get to do this thing that felt so amazing, and I get food. This is what I want to do.
Now, where are you from?
Columbia, South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Yes.
Okay, so was Margaret African American? I'm assuming not. With red hair.
Yeah, I was one of few Black kids at the school that I went to.
Do you think Margaret, not only from the red hair piece, but do you think she also got the role because?
In my mind at that time, that was what I attributed to. Do you know what I mean?
The red
and
hair.
I was probably the only Black child in that class. I know in the school I was one of few, and I was in the gifted program and all that stuff. And so I was not aware at that time of race, if that makes sense. I was just not aware. I didn't become aware until a little bit later when I faced some things and it was startling to me. And I'm like, wait, whoa, what is this? So at that time, I wouldn't have even thought of that.
And so South Carolina, mom and dad together, are they?
Up until I was 6.
Okay.
They divorced. When I was 6.
And were you the only child?
No, I was the baby.
The baby.
I had a much older brother and a much older sister.
Okay, so the divorce, how detrimental was that for you?
It was big. I was always a daddy's girl. So I think from 6 to 8, I was with my mom, and then I went to my dad. And then there was a couple of times later in life that I was back and forth, but I was raised by my dad. So it was definitely a defining thing in my life.
So was that hard being between two parents?
Of course, but I was really a daddy's girl, got the love and support that I needed from my father. And my relationship with my biological mother was always very, I don't know if strained is the right word, but it just wasn't what a mother and daughter typically have. So for most of my life, I felt like I was missing that feminine, nurturing energy.
What do you think what do you attribute that to?
I honestly, and I've been asked this before, I don't know. I think people do the best that they can with what they know at the time. And sometimes when people make decisions that are best for them, it's not necessarily best for those that are around them. And so, you know, as I've gotten older, I've just learned to extend grace and forgiveness and just, you know, accept that my journey has created the woman that I am.
But that's later on in life. I know as a child, there was a lot of
questions.
questions.
As a child, it was very difficult. Because if anybody's missing, usually, you know, it's the father. It's not the mother. So all of my friends had great, you know, relationships with their mom, go shopping with their mom, do things with their mom, and I didn't have that. So it was definitely hard as a little girl.
Did mom leave because of abuse or?
It was just they definitely had, you know, again, I was young. I was 6 when they divorced. So I definitely remember there was times where the relationship was very strained between them. It wasn't a harmonious thing, you know. So, but I was young, you know, and I only knew what I saw, and maybe I was limited to what I saw. But yeah, it definitely was a tumultuous relationship towards the end prior to the divorce.
Now, with limited interaction with your mom, from a feminine perspective, who actually poured into you? You're extremely feminine now, right? You are a girl's girl.
I am a girl's girl.
So who was that mother figure for you?
It's crazy because I literally remember, because I was for the first about 10 years of my life, girl, I was a boy's boy.
Really?
Oh my God. I was such a tomboy. Okay. I mean, you know, my older cousins and stuff, you know, that were closer in my age were boys. I was climbing trees, jumping creeks, the whole nine. And it was just like a light switch that happened. And I think I saw my first little boy and I said, I'm gonna go iron this skirt. And from there, I mean, to this day, my biological mom will be like, it is one of the most bizarre switches I have ever seen, because you literally went like night and day. Overnight to just super, and went from ultra feminine, ultra tomboy to ultra feminine.
So this was about 10, you said, right?
Yeah, about 5th grade.
And definitely around the same time that you became an actor, right? When you started.
Yeah.
So do you think that became a character for you?
I don't. Because I was still, acting was definitely already a part of what I knew I wanted to do. I didn't really have a grasp on what degree. I just knew I loved it. But just me being a feminine person, it oddly just became natural. Like even my taste in clothes, and I've always been unique. I've always been, you know, I've always loved fashion. Even from that early age, I remember really, once I made the switch, always really thinking about my outfits and my clothes, and, you know, and so I really think that was just, it really was, who I am.
You know, one of the things that Tyler Perry talks about is that in his youth, he became so creative because he entered into a different stratosphere, a different place. You know, a lot of times that was his coping mechanism, and that coping mechanism created magic for him. And now he is who he is, and he can create. Do you feel that that was any part of your journey as far as being able to tap into a different place? Because your skill in acting is so superb. So do you ever find yourself tapping into something else? And did that start as a child?
Well, I'm going to tell you what did start as a child is storytelling. I would put myself to sleep by creating skits in the bed. And usually it would be a hospital scene because I was in the bed, so to make it make sense. So I didn't realize that's what I didn't realize that was a thing. I only thought about it after I became a writer, which was, you know, later in life. But I used to do that as a child, just make up stories and, you know, use my imagination to fall asleep every night.
I saw that in action when we were working on a skit for the agency, and just how your mind worked. You were like, do this, go here, go there. Your mind just clicked into overdrive to the point of perfection in that space and in your craft. And it's only a certain type of person that can actually tap into that. But let's move on. So so elementary, junior, high school, uneventful at all?
I was, you know, in the performing arts.
Okay.
You know, I was doing like regional theater. I remember there was a drama program in the city that gave me a scholarship to go. So I was doing theater and, you know, doing things locally, Charleston, different places. And went to a performing arts middle school. So I always was always involved.
It was
pageants.
always known from the beginning
Oh,
that you would
yeah.
be an actress. So it was
Yes.
never any other question like, I'm going to be a nurse, or you just knew you were going to be an
My
actress.
father wanted me to be a nurse.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy you said that.
Right,
He
right.
literally wanted me to be a registered nurse.
So did you get a lot of pushback? Because I can imagine in the African-American family, a lot of people would say, girl, you better go get you a good government job somewhere because the likelihood of being an actress is slim to none. Did you get that type of
That is
feedback?
1,000% exactly what I got.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you fight against that? What was your feedback on that?
I'm a strong-willed person. And I knew that I loved to do what I love to do. And I just always had a passion for it. And my father always instilled work ethic in me. Mm-hmm. And so while he may have been instilling it in me for a different reason, I translated that into what I was doing or wanted to do, which was entertainment. Mm-hmm. And I just, was dogmatic about it.
I know that had to be a true struggle because you were in South Carolina.
Yes.
There is no entertainment.
There is no entertainment.
In South Carolina, right?
There is no entertainment.
Right.
So it was definitely a struggle, and it was definitely something my father didn't understand. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
So there was a lot of back and forth between.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, he just wanted me to take the path that would be safe. For his daughter.
Yeah, he was looking out for you.
Yeah, so that I could be okay, independent, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Live a good life. And I would always say, Dad, there's more out there. There's other things,
so
from a young age.
You were a dreamer.
Oh, yeah.
So what does Dad say today?
Well, my father is in heaven.
Okay.
2012, he passed on. But about 2 years before he passed, before we found out he had cancer, he apologized to me and told me how proud he was that I continued on my path even though I didn't have his support. Mm-hmm. And he recognized that, and he was very proud of me. So he did eventually acknowledge it and accept it and encourage it and become a supporter.
And I'm sure down the line you realized that pushback was because he loved you so
Absolutely.
much.
And I always knew that's what it was. Like, I always knew he just wanted the best for me, but I knew he didn't understand what was best for me.
What would he say to you, Kinnik? Like, go get a job. What were some of were they like scathing words that he would say? Or?
Well, let me tell you something. I've always worked.
Okay.
I mean, I worked before. I used to, I lied about my age. My first job, I lied about my age and kept putting off bringing my ID up there, the fish and chip place, baby. I always had a good job now. I mean, I just have always been that person, 2-3 jobs, literally, from a very young age. So that was never a concern. Mainly the thing was going to college and just getting a good job. So I left very early. I graduated from school at 16, a year early. I was on my own right after high school, 17, 18.
On your own? You mean you moved out on your own at 16 years old?
Mm-hmm. At 7, well, I think I turned 17 like a couple of days or something after graduation. But yeah, 17. I was on my own.
Still in South Carolina? Did you move?
Still in South Carolina.
Okay.
I was this weird, extremely responsible child. A creation of my father, always great credit, always bills paid on time, always at work, always it was the most, now that I think about it, it was just the most bizarre thing because I would walk to work. I was never late. People knew if they didn't want a shift, they would, they called me Shantae growing up. My middle name is Shantae. Mm-hmm. Shantae will do it. Shantae will take it. It used to be to a point where people were like, you cannot work any more hours. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I've just always had this responsible thing, which, fortunately has translated into what I later grew to do. Mm-hmm. But my father talked to me so much about being responsible and handling your business and, keeping good credit, a good driving record, always having insurance, spend all you got, but never all you have. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I took everything to heart and dogmatically applied it.
So why not college? How did you process that college was not for you?
It's really crazy because I am, people would consider me someone who's highly intelligent, graduated from high school early, very always in advanced classes in school. I really wanted to be an entertainer. And so I picked up and moved to Atlanta in 97 and started that journey. I think I did go to school for maybe a semester.
Okay.
Maybe a year, associate in arts. But how
did you know off the bat when you were in there for that year that this wasn't for you?
It wasn't that I knew that wasn't for me, because I'm a smart enough person that I could have made it work, but I knew what was for me.
Right.
And that was always so strong.
Okay, so why Atlanta and not New York at first?
Because it was the closest.
Okay.
My older sister and her husband was moving as well, and it was still close enough, to home where I still wasn't too far and too far out of the energy.
Kinnik, back then in 97, Atlanta wasn't what it is today.
Oh, no,
right?
it wasn't.
That whole Southern hip hop and all that was just getting started back then.
But it was still more than Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah, so that was still a big city for you,
it was still a big city. And it was a city that I'd heard. I had an older cousin who moved here and when I was younger. And so I'd always heard her Atlanta. So Atlanta was like a thing for me. You know what I mean? So I felt like I could make something more happen in Atlanta.
And it was right after the
Super Bowl. And I still wasn't crazy. Yes. Right, well, it was right.
Because Super Bowl was 96.
It was right also the Olympics.
That's what I meant.
Yes.
I'm sorry. The Olympics. It was right after the Olympics.
Yes. So then it's like, popping, it was after freaking, that.
I know, right? We don't want to see if we're going to find any videos out there.
If you see me, it ain't me. It ain't me.
Okay, so you're here, you're in Atlanta, and then what happens? How do you start to say, I'm going to go after my dream as an actor, especially in a place like Atlanta? People think, oh, okay, it makes sense to move to Atlanta today. I want to take them back to 97. 97, it was a big risk for you to still come here and say, I want to be an actress. Because right now there's studios and so forth here. Back then, there were no studios here.
There wasn't, but there was theater.
Yeah.
That touring theater circuit where you sing and act was the thing. And that's really what started it for me. I was doing theater, back-to-back shows. So I was doing independent theater, tour with Tyler, Shelley Garrett. I mean, I was Alliance Theater, Kenny Leon, that was my thing. I was a theater actress.
And so you came here, found your way. And so you immediately talked to me a little bit about that opportunity to get in with Tyler. Because back in 97, 98, Tyler, it wasn't the Tyler that he is today, right?
No.
So which Tyler did you get involved with? Was it the early Tyler, midway?
It was the mid-Tyler.
Mid-Tyler, okay.
It was the mid-Tyler. He was Tyler Perry, for sure. But he wasn't movie Tyler Perry yet. So
how did you get his attention? Because you know how many people are out there that's like, I got to get the attention of Tyler Perry. How did you do that?
Believe it or not, people would meet me and would say, Tyler needs to know you. So people kept telling him. I remember I met someone who did his drapes. I know it was 3 people. Her distinctively, I remember. But everybody kept saying, Tyler needs to know you. Tyler needs to know you. So multiple people came to him telling him, you need to know about this girl named Kinnik. And so by the time he contacted me, I was already touring with Shelley Garrett. I don't know if you remember Shelley Garrett. She was a pioneer.
Yeah, Shelley was a big deal.
Shelley was a big deal. Now, reversing it a little bit, I waited outside of the Fox Theater and gave Shelley Garrett my headshot. He interviewed me over the phone, auditioned me over the phone, and 2 weeks later I was on tour with him.
Okay.
And then 2 weeks after that, I was the lead in his show. So the following year, Tyler, I think it was January, because I remember it was really cold. Tyler reached out, and I was like, I'm already, supposed to be touring later this year with Shelley. And then they called me back, and they were like, well, Tyler just wants you to come to the house. And so I came to the house, not knowing it was everybody that he was intending for this next tour, and met him, auditioned for him. And, I'll never forget, he looked at me, he was just like, and I came in, I did my thing, acting and sang. He was like, you make me sick. And after that, I don't know, I believe it was maybe a couple of weeks later we were on tour. It just seemed like it happened very quickly.
Fast. Now, how long did you stay on tour with him?
About 6 months.
Okay. Okay.
About 6 months.
And then what happened because after being on tour with Shelly and Tyler, what's next?
I mean, you come back and, I started working on doing television and film, but I continued doing theater. You know what I mean? I continued doing theater. That was when I went to like Alliance and Kenny Leon, who had just started True Colors Theater. He's the big Broadway director. And so I was a theater girl.
And then I think a lot of people began to know who you were when the new show American Idol came to the stage, right?
Yes.
So which season was American Idol for you?
I was on season 5 of
Season
American
5,
Idol.
okay. And so as a theater girl, what made you say, I'm going to go after a singing contest?
I went with somebody else to audition.
So
I wasn't going for myself. I was riding with somebody.
So you went.
I just was like, oh, I can. I'm here. I'm waiting in line. You still, if you're with someone, it's like a group. So you're waiting in line no matter what. And I was like, oh, I'm within the age range, so I might as well. And then I was like, what do you mean golden ticket? Like, what are you talking about?
So the girl that the person you came with, did she get it or he?
I went with a friend of mine who was taking her young son.
Okay, so did he get a golden ticket?
He didn't.
Okay.
And he's phenomenal, but he didn't.
So when you got that golden ticket and you were selected, how did you feel at that moment?
It was a whirlwind. You just caught up in this thing, and I honestly didn't realize I was on American Idol until I was off of American Idol. Like, you just going with the moment to moment to moment, and it's a complete, almost like a disassociation. Like, you're just going through the process, but you don't even realize what you're in and what's happening while it's happening. And it's a much longer process than people realize before you even get to the place where you are, interviewing with Paula, Simon, and Randy. So it's months, you go back home, you're processing. I was doing a show with Kenny Leon at the time, so I was sneaking out of the hotel in the middle of the night to go to North Carolina, audition again, and coming back for a show. Like, it was kind of crazy.
Was it worth it?
I have to say that obviously whatever's meant to be a part of your journey is a part of your journey. It was a very difficult thing to be a part of, and it was a very difficult thing to process mentally out of.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
What was the difficult part about being a part of American Idol?
Well, it's just so much pressure, and it's so much that people don't see, and it's so much that is orchestrated and set up and by design. And, it being a part of reality shows is a lot. And at that time, it was so new.
It seemed like, too, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it seemed like Simon took a lot of enjoyment out of berating some of the guests. Did you ever feel
that was his persona, though?
Right.
And I feel like even some of the comments were this is a well-oiled machine, a multi-million-dollar machine. They don't leave things to chance.
No.
So even comments and things, all of that is orchestrated before you even come in the room.
But when you discard that person, you leave them with those words, it could really devastate someone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
So what was your experience with American Idol?
My experience is I'll be honest, regardless of what they said, had I felt that I had done my best, I would have been okay with that. But I didn't do my best.
Why
because
not?
I was trying to acquiesce to what I was being told to do, to instead of staying in the pocket and doing what I know was in my wheelhouse, what I'm comfortable with. I'm trying to figure out what is the girl they want to see, what is the and then you have all this pressure and and limited preparation for this style of stuff that's not even you, and you're thrown in front of millions of people, and I just was not able to sustain. I saw other people really stay true to who they were. And even though they didn't necessarily make it to the finals or whatever the case may be, I respect that. Like, I respected that. I just wasn't strong enough at that time to do that. I was trying to figure out what was the right thing to do. And for that, I didn't show up as my best self, as the best version of my talent.
Is that your biggest regret?
I would say so, yeah. Because regardless, having that platform, if you can just feel good about what you did, no matter what anyone says, then you're good. Then I would be good personally. So for me, it wasn't about what they said. It was about me not being strong enough to stay in my lane and in my zone and who I was as a vocalist.
So what level were you at when they dismissed you from American Idol?
I was top 12, going into top 12.
Wow. So that was very difficult, then, right?
Yeah.
And so what were the words that create, I guess, a nightmare for you? What do you continue to remember hearing from them that makes that part of your life very difficult?
It wasn't anything that they said. It was feeling like I embarrassed myself and feeling like I embarrassed my family, feeling like I disappointed my hometown. Like I just felt like I got to this platform, this huge platform, only to not deliver. And that was devastating. It's one thing to crash and burn in front of 300 people. You know what I mean? We're talking millions. And because of the internet, you never outlive it. So that was the hardest thing to process, is just because I am a perfectionist. I am a person that always wants to do well. I am a person that wants to excel. So having not, that was the hardest part for me.
You know, and to make it to the top 12, and you look at millions of people every year that try out, and you still not be at a point of, you know, being happy with it. That talks about the perfection that you want to have. Another thing, too, about American Idol, it seems like those who do not win end up becoming more successful than the actual winners. Have you noticed that, too?
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Because who actually won that season?
Oh, gosh. Gray-haired guy. I can't believe I can't remember his name. That's crazy. Yes, thank you. It was the gray-haired guy. I feel so bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because if I think about it, let's talk about who's really still out there, because you got Fantasia, of course, which is one of my all-time faves. You got
her.
Jennifer Hudson. You can have Clay. You have Ruben. But Ruben's not really doing too much of anything.
I know. I saw his name pop up recently, but he's...
For a second, you said season 3?
5.
Season 5?
Yeah.
Okay. It was... So then you can say this with it. And I'll edit this up. Terry Hicks. Taylor Hicks.
Taylor Hicks.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Taylor Hicks.
Yes.
Okay. So who actually won that season?
Taylor Hicks.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know is anybody talking about him today?
I haven't recently heard of what he's doing. No, I think at one time he might have been doing Broadway or something.
Okay.
I'm not sure. But yeah.
When we think about the successful folks from American Idol, right off my head, because I was American Idol junkie. It's so funny.
Really?
Oh, yes. Me and my girlfriend Ramona used to be American Idol. I remember being pregnant with my son.
Wow.
And the same year that Fantasia, Jennifer Hudson, and LaToya were the top 3. And that was like my highlight. I was sitting there pregnant and we were staring at that TV. I was an American.
Oh my God.
So
that was the year though.
That was the year.
Baby, honey.
That was the
Let's
year.
Be clear.
That was the year.
Nothing ever like it.
Nothing else. No one can top it. But you know, that Ruben and Clay period, that was another biggie. That was a biggie.
It was.
But so we had Kelly Clarkson, you have Ruben, you have Clay.
And you remember with Kelly, Justin Warini, which was from Atlanta.
That's right.
His brother, I was friends with his brother.
But didn't he pass? Someone passed away.
Not him.
Okay. But I remember he was the curly hair
Yes.
guy. So I wonder
he made
what
it to
he's
the
doing
end.
now.
I don't know. I'm friends with his brother, Adrian Bell, who lives here in Atlanta. And their dad was a
commissioner or somebody. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
But yeah, he was from Atlanta.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you just think about where everybody is today, right? And looking at the way Hollywood is shaping up today with all of the scandal, the drama, the pain, the everything. What makes you want to stay in this industry? Because right now, Hollywood is getting a major black eye.
I just don't feel like I've ever really been in Hollywood. Because I've always been creating my own lane. And even when, I was working for like ABC and Disney, the movie industry, I never really got into, I was never a partier. I never went to the parties. Where you gonna find me is eating. I'm gonna go somewhere and get something to eat.
Even young Kinnik, never.
I never was that girl. I really wasn't. So I never did a lot of I didn't, my spirit would get vexed with a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? So if there was anything, it seemed like drug related or I just never was a part of that.
Are you shocked that all of this is coming to the forefront?
Shocked? No. I mean, things are happening. Maybe that, it's actually crashing the way that it is, because some people, they build this persona of untouchable. And so, I think we all kind of buy into it. And you think, well, they can get away with it because they are who they are. So I think that part, that it's really crashing the way that it is.
I think the other thing too is we just always said, hey, it's always been that way.
Right.
So that's just part of it.
It's part of it, right.
If you really want this bad enough, then that's part of what it is. It's kind of the way. And so it's just really unfortunate to see. I mean, we all kind of saw, knew, heard, but to see the way that Hollywood is crumbling today, it's very, 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 very sad. But I think it's good, too, for the young African-American women to now gain their voice. But how much of that voice, Kinnik, do you think, I want to say, do we have some type of ownership behind? Meaning, the casting couch and all of those other things. Did you ever experience any of that? Did you ever have anybody say, you must, in order to do this?
Yes, but not really. Okay. Like, not on a real level where anything really was at stake. It's so crazy because it's, I've had it a few times in music, but it was on such a level that ain't happening. So, what I mean? Right. So next, I've never had it on a level where I felt like a devastating, like a huge opportunity was in front of me and that was done. I always say my father has been a guardian angel, because even the men that I ended up connecting to in Hollywood were amazing men who never was anything other than respectful, supportive,
and protective.
Uplifted me, protective. We're still, in touch to this day. I still have the same attorney. Pastor Torrey Roberts was my pastor. He was the first person to sponsor one of my shows. The vice president of Wells Fargo became a business mentor. I was really blessed.
No, you
really
were
was blessed.
Really blessed. Really blessed.
I was really blessed.
So we leave American Idol, and then you decide, you know what? I'm not trying to fit anybody else's mold. I'm going to create my own opportunities. And so you became a playwright. So let's talk a little bit about that whole process. Why did you decide to create your own play?
Okay, so I'll give you a little snippet of how I grew to write the script and then how the play thing happened. So a gentleman, and I was able to talk to him about this recently, as a matter of fact, and we go years without talking, but a guy from my hometown knew that I toured with Tyler, and he promotes shows and does all kind of stuff, and so he reached out to me and was like, hey, can you put me in touch with Tyler? Well, I knew I couldn't put him in touch with Tyler, but I had been thinking about writing. I was like, I think I can. So when he said that, I went home and wrote a show real quick. 4 days. Okay. And I came back to him and said, yo, I couldn't get in touch with Tyler, but I wrote something. And that's exactly what he did. Okay, he was like, I ain't never talked to him again after that. And so I just sat on this show. And so I moved, fast forward about 3 years or so later, I think, I moved to LA. And up until that point, I had always done shows on a major scale, so it never looked like something tangible to me. But when I moved to LA, I started doing shows in black box theaters, and they were well-produced and great shows, and and I was like, I feel like I could possibly do this. And so I was doing a show at the time, and the young lady that was the assistant director, she was dope. Like, her vision, her eye, her professionalism, she was dope, and I really respected her. And I asked her, I said, well, I have a script that I think I might want to produce, but I want to know if you would read it for me and tell me if, what you think about it. She was the first person I ever let read it. And so she called me after she read it, and she said, let's meet. And I said, you know what? I was like, you can tell me over the phone. It's okay. Like, I know it's probably a mess. You know what I mean? But I thought it was great. But, And she said, no, this is awesome, and I would love to help you produce this. And so she directed it. I produced it, starred in it. And I really only wanted a vehicle for myself as an actress. I was not trying to become a playwright. I wanted to give myself an opportunity maybe to get an agent in LA, be seen in LA, start making those connections. And I expected it to be a one and done.
And then
a year later, I get 7 NAACP nominations. 1 is for Best Playwright, win Best Female Lead. 5 of my 7 cast members are nominated for awards. And it was just this mind-blowing, like, what is happening right now? You know what I mean? Like, it was insane.
I know I could only imagine in a year, 7
NAACP nominations for the first and only thing I'd ever written.
Wow. So what was next?
What was next was obviously when's the next one,
right?
And but I'm in the corner,
like there's a lot
shaking.
Of pressure.
Absolutely,
yeah.
I'm
because
like,
they're trying
I don't know what I'm doing.
That. Right.
I'm like, do I really know how to write, or was this like a one-hit fluke? Did I have some kind of beginner's luck? I was petrified, like really, to go back and try this again and be subjected to opinions again. And so I went and wrote, and I said, this is literally how I came up with the story. I said, if I can make the antagonist the lead character and people question how they thought they were going to perceive them or receive them, then I'm a writer. And I created a show, Pieces, with a mistress as the lead. And then I was like, when I got the reaction from that, the awards from that, I said, okay, I can do this.
Where did you get the antagonist? Where did you know anyone that actually could relate to that? Like, how were you able to build that out?
I knew I wanted to create the dynamic of Christianity and how that plays. So the weird thing about the way I write is I'll come up with the overview of the story, right? The overview, the big, broad strokes. But as I sit to write, something else happens. And these characters, I literally hear them. And I can't even type as fast as they're talking. So I'm like trying to capture. So the story that unfolds on paper, I can't say that I thought of it. It just happens.
It's sort of like where I understand what you're talking about, because when I do my onboarding sessions with my clients, the whole game plan of how I plan to execute plays out in front of me. I see it. It's like God is doing a download, and then I write it out and present it, and the client we execute it, and it's like the clients are like, wow. And I say I can't take credit for this because it's a download.
Right.
Michael Jackson and Prince talks about that too. I remember Michael Jackson said that he used to stay up in the middle of the night and wait for God to drop the song in his body, and he would hurry up and go in the studio and record it because he knew that God was dropping that same download into him, Prince, and some other folks, and he wanted to record it before Prince would.
Wow.
When he talked about it in the interview, I was a little girl, but for some reason I remember that, and now I can understand it. So it sounds like you had that same experience as well, where it's a download that comes upon you.
It's a download, for sure, for sure. Because I walk away and come back and read it and don't remember.
And you're like, how?
And it's like, I'm like, the things that happen, because, if anybody knows, I write with a lot of, twists and turns and unexpected moments. And I'm shocked when I come back and read it. And I'm like, wow, like, it has to be nothing but God. It has to be a gift, because I'm not even remembering the details of what I'm creating.
And then you continue to build and continue to grow, continue to get accolades from all over. And then you decide, I want to work with the children.
That was never a decision.
No, it just came on you.
I never decided I was going to be a playwright. I never decided I was going to work with kids.
It all came.
It all just came. So my name, being, in the industry and in LA, got put in the hat to be an acting coach for a show. Okay. At that time, the show was Grownish.
Okay.
And it was on Fremantle. And so I get the call, and I'm thinking, like, they got the wrong number. Like, me, I'm not an acting coach. So I go to the, interview. make it past the first interview. And then by then I'm starting to get vested, get to the second interview. Then I get a third interview with Kenya Barris and the producers and all that stuff. And then by then I want it. Even though that wasn't a part of my journey, you know, I've mentally started seeing myself as an acting coach. And I didn't get it. And so I'm the type of person, if I don't excel at something, I want to know why. Like, I want to know what I was missing. So there was the acting coach for Blackish that I happened to know from the theater world that I ran into her to play, and I asked her if I could possibly come shadow her, and intern under her. And she said, I'm gonna get approval from producers. And she was like, the producers really liked you. They're very fond of you. They let me come shadow her. Then she said, I think you're great. You know, you should go over to Grownish and shadow the other young lady as well, which happened to be the lady who beat me out for the job. So I went and, you know, shadowed and learned under her.
So was that a hard?
Not at all.
Hard? Okay.
No, because it's like, I got thrust into a position that I really initially didn't feel ready for anyway. And then you have somebody who got it. Now let me learn what that thing is.
That's the mindset to have, because, you know, many times, Kinnik, what people will do is they'll try to size that person up. They'll spend all the time sizing the person up who got the job, trying to belittle who that person was versus trying to figure out what can I learn from this situation.
That's all I wanted to do. And she was so gracious. And she's still one of my friends to this day.
That's amazing.
She was so gracious, taught me everything. I had no idea that doing that, I was positioning myself, another show was already being created, but I didn't know. So a year and a half later, I get a call out of the blue. Now ABC has another spinoff, ish spinoff called Mixed-ish. And I was on the short list of coaches, went for the interview, and got the job. So my first acting coaching job was with ABC, major network, Kenya Barris.
How long did you stay on that?
That show lasted 2 seasons.
Okay.
And it was when I tell you heartbreaking, because that truly is a highlight of my journey. That was the most beautiful, euphoric experience in my life. Like getting up, going to set every day, doing what I love. Then I realized I'm great at it. And then I'm, you know, working with these amazing little stars.
And is that how you started working with the kids?
Yeah, because then Disney, one of the directors saw me and took me to Disney with her. And so I did 2 Disney films. And then, of course, then people are personally asking you. So then I started my private coaching business virtually, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. You know, the funny thing about it is most people think everything is still at this point going to be handed to Kinnik. Right? So you decide to move back to Atlanta.
Yes.
And I know that you you wrote some additional plays that done very well. And I know most recently we even had an additional issue that you believe was racially motivated, right? What exactly happened with that, Kinnik?
So let me say this. It's challenging regardless being a woman in this industry. Not only is nothing handed to me, I have to fight for everything, even when I'm paying for it. I'm charged more. I found out a theater house here charged me 3 times the amount that they charge other producers. Most people don't even take my phone call. I'm ignored by most people. So
even
not only
with your resume,
even with my resume.
I guess it's because when you call, you can't lead with your resume, right?
But I never do. You know what I mean? Of course, you know, and I'm calling.
So they don't know who they're not calling back.
But it's like it's such a press for me to do this stuff. It's such a press. The finances to do it, the everything. It's such a press. And so the last, thing that you're referring to was with my situation I had booked Georgia Tech. They were somebody that I went to visit when I first got back to Atlanta, when I was just looking at theaters, hadn't really know who's who and what's what, just actually didn't go see them, call them. They were just somebody that I called. And they told me we're booked up for years or booked up for a year and a half. So they were out of sight, out of mind. They called me out of the blue and said, we have a spring date open. And it just happened to be right at the time I wanted to produce a show. But I was very hesitant because I'm just coming back to Atlanta, building my audience here. If you're filling a venue of that size, 900 seats, You got to put the right kind of marketing behind it. People have to know who you are. You know what I mean? So I was very hesitant about it. So I didn't take it lightly. So I stepped back and reached out to some people who expressed how much they enjoyed my work, who possibly had some influence or maybe relationships, and really just tried to strategize before I just went in there and did it.
Because 900 seats is no joke.
900 seats is 900 seats, baby.
Right. And especially, this is the part I want to make sure everybody understands. You just moved back.
Just got back here.
And if you don't know, if you're watching this and you're not from or live in Atlanta, Atlanta is a very cliquish place.
Very cliquish.
Very cliquish. So it's either they know you and like you, or they're attracted to the names of those that are associated.
Right.
So you sign up for 900 seats.
I signed up for 900 seats and began working my butt off. You know what I mean? It takes a lot to put a show together like that. And get the right people to say yes. That was one of the first times I kind of put stock in, because I never believed in trying to just grab a whole bunch of names. You know what I'm saying? I've always I know that my writing is strong, and I always just want to get great storytellers without regard to how many followers they have and who they are. You know what I mean? Just great people, great actors. And so this time I knew I needed to put some thought into, who I cast. So, of course, that's a bit challenging because people don't really want to do theater, to be honest. Like, theater's a true thespian thing because it's a lot of work. You know what I mean? I think the payoff is huge, the gratification, but you have to love it. So getting the right people to say yes was a thing. Did that. Trying to, get interviews, radio, all the stuff that takes, where people might think I pick up a phone and make it happen. No, there's weeks and even months of follow-up and, and just, a lot of no's.
Your passion.
A lot. Yes. You have to have passion to do this. And I put this show together and, we're down to the wire. My actors, have one of my actors is coming in from LA, have flown in. We've been rehearsing like crazy, and I'm not, back in LA, I was known as a rehearsal Nazi. You know what I mean? Because you gonna know the show. You know what I mean? Right. And so I don't leave things to chance. I believe in preparation. So with that being said, these actors and everybody that's a part of it has worked hard. And a week before the show, they're pulling the show. They pull my tickets. And what had happened, I had reached out to, so in a theater that big, they have the mezzanine seats, the seats in the back. Well, there's a company called Gold Star that has like theater goers and subscribers that you can sell your tickets to, but it also is a marketing tool. So you can get them to sell some tickets, but it goes out to their theater goers. So those type of people who attend theater know about your show. So I'd reached out to Gold Star early in the process and found out about 2 weeks before the show, week and a half, 2 weeks before the show, that they had never put my tickets on sale. So their audience didn't even know about the show. So I'm thinking it's on autopilot. It's never even happening. Reach back out to, so there's another company called Groupon. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, it's a week and a half before the show. What's my contingency plan? So, okay, Groupon is kind of like the same thing. It's just not specific to theater. So I look at my contract and it says, if you sell tickets anywhere other than through Georgia Tech, you could be subject to a $500 fine. Okay. So I'm like, okay, $500 fine. I'd rather do that and get those mezzanine seats sold, get that widespread marketing, last minute push. I'll take the $500 fine. So I reached out to them, and though it never actually went live, they found out that I reached out to them, which I'm still figuring that part out, and canceled my entire production.
Wow. And I know when you and I first talked about it, you initially thought it was racially motivated.
I do. I still do.
Now, how do you tie that back to being racially motivated if it could have been because they felt it was a contract violation?
Well, the contract violation clearly states what the punishment is for that. But let me say this. When we went through the walkthrough of the venue, there was a particular person who happened to be in charge of the box office that almost could spit venom at us. And it was the most, if you've been born and raised in the South, We know what that feels like. So my spidey antennas went off. I wasn't going to say anything to my staff because I'm still trying to keep everything, you know, because the other part of their staff was great. It was just this one particular person who happened to be the box office person. Just nasty. Just everything was opposition, attitude, everything. So I said, she's going to do something. But I thought it was just be rude to my guests. I'm not thinking to the magnitude. I'm thinking,
the whole
oh my
show.
God, no.
Right.
I'm just thinking she's going to give my guests a hard way to go. So after that meeting, I told, you know, my production manager, I said, we're going to have a person in the box office with her so that she's not treating people crazy. I had no idea that it could possibly go, you know, it would be something like that. But I also feel strongly she was looking for it because so I also had on my site, I'm also a 501c3, a nonprofit. So there are sponsorship opportunities for my shows. So the first thing that I got, now, again, I'm new to Atlanta. People don't really know me. So I had this information on my site, but you have to request it to get it. I had not gotten a request from my site. All of a sudden, there's this weird made-up email, Angela ABCD123, you know, something crazy at Yahoo that emails me and requests information. And after that, the first email they sent to me was, we found out you're selling tickets on your site. That was the first one.
Okay.
Then it was so it was trying to look for something to hang, because to this day, they can't answer, why is it stipulated that it could be a fine, but you thought it was worth canceling the entire production 5 days before the show? They can't give an answer. All they say is, we're so glad that she found another venue.
Legalities behind this?
It's not closed.
It's not closed.
I'll say that.
So Kinnik, I mean, what's next for you? What do you want? What's next?
You know, the blessing in that, it showed me that I'm operating in my purpose, because what it showed me was no weapon formed against me shall prosper.
That's right.
Within 24 hours, I had another venue and my show still went up.
So your show still happened?
My show still happened.
So you just had to quickly notify everybody. I
had to turn the whole thing
around.
So
what you showed here is that you didn't allow one pony to stop the show.
Absolutely not.
So, and also, I think if anybody was paying attention to this whole conversation, one of the things that I think rings true is how important relationships are. I'm hearing that from you throughout our whole conversation, is the relationships. Because in order for you to find another venue that quickly,
yes,
right?
Yes,
because you got costs, you got preps, you got being able to pick up the call, pick up the phone, and get those additional.
And I attribute that to, you know, my team, my production manager, one of the actresses on my team, Jillian Walzer. People that ride with you. They make sure you're okay. My production manager got on there and called every venue that had a chair in the city. Jillian Walzer picked up the phone, and she had a relationship with True Colors, and she said, I have this young lady, put me on the phone with them, and they, you know, moved things around for me to be able to come into that facility. Amazing. So it was unbelievable. For me, I didn't have time to operate in the disbelief, but to everybody looking, they probably couldn't believe it. It was my guests got refunded. My guests got told this show is canceled and will not be rescheduled. 5 days before the show, this is on a Monday, and my show is on Saturday. It was the most unbelievable thing. I mean, something you don't even, I used to have, I have dreams sometimes about bad things happening with my show. I would have never even dreamt something that detrimental. But the fact that my show still happened, and I don't know if you've seen a video on my timeline or on my page where I got this ridiculous, crazy ovation at the end of the show. And that has given me another level of confidence in me walking in my purpose and understanding that I'm literally doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and that even my mistakes will work out for my good. No weapon formed against me shall prosper, and that I'm always going to be successful. The way that next door opened for you, that clearly tells you that you're walking in your passion. Absolutely. Things will just fall in your lap. Absolutely. When it's in your purpose. So what's next for you, Kinnik? So much. I have a full 2025. So like I said, previously I was in a place where I would just kind of take it show by show by show. But now I'm like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. So I have a show happening February 14th in Atlanta, Valentine's Day dinner theater. I'm introducing dinner theater to Atlanta, partnering with a chef, presenting a 2-person, 1-act play while people dine, you know, and if anybody knows anything about me, I like it, you know, she's a little bougie. So, you know, you go dress to impress and come with a night of, you know, I always love to exceed expectations. So that's going to be an intimate, elite event, Valentine's Day, putting up another show in April, another one of my big shows, possibly the first one that started it all, Sunday morning. Morning is spelled Mourning, and I play the character Sunday. I'm going to be producing a children's show in the summer, and another major production in the fall. And then I just got hired to write, produce, and direct another children's film. So I'm about to start writing that as well.
So what it looks like to me is, Kinnik, you're just getting started.
When I say
getting started,
I mean the ignition just got turned on.
Yeah, I'm excited for you.
Thank you,
I'm so
Queen.
excited.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming in today.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor. Like I said, you are somebody. The day that when I first met you, I was like, this chick is dope. Like, there's an energy here, and I have so much admiration for you. So I feel honored that you thought enough of me to ask me to come.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Coinology. Welcome to Coinology, the podcast.
You ain't getting no money if you constantly worried about what everybody else got to say. If you constantly got your eyes on what everybody else doing, you ain't getting no money. When it comes down to closing a deal, I get it done. Every single one. I'm the certified deal closer.
Welcome to Coinology, the podcast.